Hi, I'm Bill from CJ Pony Parts. Just like on previous models, if you're looking to lower your 2015 Mustang, there's other parts you're going to want to consider replacing besides just lowering springs. One of them is going to be the Jounce bumpers, also known as bump stops. The bump stops are designed to protect your suspension in case of it bottoming out. The factory bump stop height is designed to work around the factory springs. When you lower the car, you're more likely to hit the bump stop, which can cause drivability issues. Ford Racing is aware of this problem and offers this Jounce Bumper Kit designed specifically for lowered cars. Today we're going to show you how to install it using our 2015 GT convertible. The Ford Racing Jounce Bumper Kit is designed specifically for a lowered vehicle and includes new front and rear Jounce bumpers. Not only are these going to be a little bit shorter than the factory ones, they're also a much softer material, so should you actually hit them, it's not going to be as harsh a ride. The installation of the Jounce Bumper Kit will require you to move the shocks and struts, so Ford Racing even provides a tube of thread lock for reinstalling the factory hardware. For this installation, let a lift and a pull jack or a jack and jack stands, half-inch ratchet, 13mm socket, 15mm socket, 18mm socket, 3/4 socket, 13/16 socket, 15/16 deep socket, 21mm socket, short extension, 15mm wrench, 17mm wrench, half-inch impact gun, panel removal tool, hammer, and a spring compressor. Like I mentioned in the introduction, installing the Jounce bumpers will require you to move the shocks and struts from the vehicle. So if you're looking to do springs, it's the perfect time to do that as well. The first step in the installation is get your car up off the ground and remove all four wheels. We'll begin the installation with the front. We'll start by doing here, there's 3 bolts that go through the tower that hold the strut to the strut tower. We're going to remove 2 of the bolts, leave the third one attached, but loosen it up. Now we'll move down to the strut. We're going to start by taking the sway bar off the back of the strut. You need a wrench to hold the back of it, and then remove the nut. Once the sway bar is out of the way, we'll move on to the caliper. The caliper is held on the bracket by 2 bolts back here. We're going to move those and place the caliper aside so we can continue to remove our spindle. Place it out of the way, back here on the side. Before we move on to the strut, we're going to just pull off the 2 clips that hold the ABS line to the strut so they don't get damaged. That stuff out of the way, remove the 2 nuts that hold the bolts where the spindle connects to the strut. To hammer through the bolts, you want to put the nuts back on just till they're on the ends here so you don't damage the ends of the bolt, and smack them with a hammer. You can work the bolts out carefully. The bolt's out now, hold on to the strut. Undo that 3rd nut we left loose up on the tower and remove the assembly. Once you get the strut off, you want to put it up on a table so we can compress the spring to remove the strut top. To do that, you want to use a spring compressor. There are other ways people can say you can use a vise. Spring compressors are not that expensive to buy. You can also rent one. This is the tool we do recommend for doing this job. Spring compress, remove the strut nut. Now carefully remove the spring compressor. Now at this point, pull the dust boot off. That'll reveal our factory bump stop. Simply slide that off. Put the new one in place. You can see huge height difference between the stock one and the aftermarket. Even squeeze them, you can feel it's a lot softer than the original as well. Now put the boot back on and install the spring. Once you have the Jounce bumper installed, we're going to reinstall our front strut assembly the same way we took it out. The strut loosely mounted, now we can work the spindle back into the strut. Now we're going to tighten the nuts down. When you tighten the nut down, it's going to pull the bolt through. The threaded section will pull through the strut. Grab the sway bar end link, we'll feed it back through the strut. Reinstall the nut and we'll tighten it down. We'll put the ABS line back in the factory clips. And reinstall our rotor and caliper. Line up the caliper on the rotor. Make sure the rotor is seated properly. Just throw one lug nut on there, hand tight. That'll hold the rotor in place, makes it a lot easier to reinstall the caliper. With the strut installed, we can come up top and tighten down to 3 strut nuts. We can move on to the rears. Moving on to the rear, the first thing I'm going to do, pop the ABS line up this little bracket here to loosen it up, then remove this bolt to give us a little more play with our brake line. Next, unbolt these 2 bolts here for the shock. Pop the cover off the top of the rear shock. You can access the bolt. With the shock loose, remove the nut on the top so you're going to remove the bracket and access the bump stop. Now we're going to pull up to remove the dust stop with the sleeve. Here you can see a comparison between the Ford Racing bump stop and the stock one. Again, not only is it shorter, it's also a softer material. The new bump stop in place. Then reinstall the dust boot. And reinstall the bracket on top of the shock. Line the shock over the factory bracket and reinstall the hardware. Last step on the rears, we're going to reinstall the ABS line to the bracket. Press that in place. And we'll repeat the process on the other side, and your installation's finished. The Ford Racing Jounce Bumper Kit is a must-have part on a lowered car like our 2015 GT convertible. The shorter stops are going to be less likely to be hit, and if we do happen to bottom out, they're a lot softer, so the ride's going to be a lot less harsh. Installation time is around 2 hours, so be back on the road in no time. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel for more installation videos, and check out cj20parts.com for the best selection of Ford racing parts.